The story opened on a busy city street where a young man named Wang Han sped through traffic on his delivery bike. He worked as a food delivery rider, weaving between cars with practiced ease. As he rode, his phone began to ring. Without slowing down, he picked it up and asked who it was. On the other end, a woman's trembling voice said she was pregnant with his child and that they needed to talk. Wang Han frowned, shouting over the traffic that he had no time for scam calls, calling it a cheap trick before hanging up abruptly. The woman tried to stop him, but the call had already ended. Wang Han muttered in frustration, convinced it was another scammer trying an old trick. He pushed his bike faster and arrived at the delivery center, parking with his usual flair. Inside, his co-workers were chatting animatedly. One of them, a plump man nicknamed Fatty, was gossiping about something big. He said it was unfair that the young lady from the prestigious Su family in Jiangning was marrying the son of the city's richest man. As he spoke, Wang Han walked in with a confident smirk and asked what Fatty was mumbling about this time. Fatty eagerly explained that the Su family's daughter was marrying a rich man's son, but Wang Han brushed it off, asking why a guy earning $5,000 a month cared about rich people's weddings. Fatty argued that it was a waste because the Su family's daughter was breathtakingly beautiful, while the groom was nothing but an unattractive, sleazy man. It felt wrong, he said, like a perfect woman being handed to a pig. Wang Han scoffed until he saw the photo on Fatty's phone. His expression changed instantly. The girl in the picture looked familiar. Taking the phone from Fatty, he stared closely, his heart skipping. He realized he knew her. Fatty mistook his silence for agreement, saying she really was a good girl wasted on a bad man. But Wang Han wasn't thinking about that. He remembered a night not long ago, the night that changed everything. His mind drifted to a memory from 1 month earlier. That night, a woman named Su Chi had been walking unsteadily through the corridor of a hotel. Her head spun as she mumbled that something felt wrong. Normally, she could handle her drinks, but tonight was different. She wondered if someone had slipped something into her glass at the Quinn House party. Her vision blurred as she looked at the room number, 806, but in her dizzy state, she misread it as 809. She knocked lightly and entered. Inside that very room, Wang Han was sitting alone, drinking in silence. He had been brooding over his failed job interview, frustrated that people said his aura was too intense. He had decided to give up and return to his delivery work. When Su Chi stumbled into his room, she looked dazed and weak. Seeing the open door, she assumed it was her own room. She muttered something about forgetting to close it earlier, then walked inside. Her eyes met Wang Han's for a moment before she fell onto the bed, whispering that her head was spinning and her body felt unbearably hot. She reached out to him and asked if he was there to help her. Wang Han froze, taken aback by how beautiful she looked even in her disoriented state. He couldn't tell if he was dreaming. When she came closer, pleading softly for help, his heart pounded. Everything blurred into confusion, a night neither of them would forget. The memory faded, pulling Wang Han back to the present. His co-workers were still laughing and teasing him. One of them nudged him, saying he looked spaced out again. Fatty chuckled and said Wang Han probably imagined something crazy like the last time, when he claimed to have spent a night with an international movie star. Another added that Wang Han was always full of stories, sometimes a secret arms dealer, sometimes the heir to a Beijing elite family. The group burst into laughter, mocking him. One co-worker joked that if Wang Han was really so rich or powerful, he wouldn't be delivering food on a scooter. Wang Han only smirked and told them they wouldn't understand, that it was called hiding in plain sight. His friends rolled their eyes, teasing him even more until Fatty told everyone to stop joking and get back to work. Just as they were about to disperse, the sound of a luxury sports car drew everyone's attention. The sleek vehicle stopped right in front of them. The boys froze when a stunning woman stepped out. Fatty gasped, recognizing her instantly. It was Su Chi, the heiress of the Su family. The group stared in disbelief, wondering what someone of her status was doing there. Then Su Chi walked straight toward Wang Han. Her eyes locked onto him as she demanded to know why he hadn't answered her calls. Everyone stood frozen. Fatty blinked and whispered that this couldn't be real. Wang Han actually knew her. Another coworker stammered in shock, trying to process what was happening. Wang Han awkwardly replied that he hadn't seen any calls and asked what was going on. But Su Chi didn't hesitate. She said she was pregnant and that the baby was his. The entire delivery center fell silent. Then, chaos. His friends shouted in disbelief, echoing each other with gasps and curses. Fatty clutched his head, shouting that he would never doubt Wang Han again. But Wang Han himself was speechless. He looked at her, trying to make sense of it all, and asked if she was sure she wasn't mistaken. Sanu's eyes stayed cold. She told him to come with her to the hospital. Fatty shouted for him to go already, insisting they'd cover for him at work. Wang Han nodded, saying if it involved him, he had to face it. He climbed into her car, and they drove off. Inside the car, Wang Han finally asked if the baby was really his. Su Chi glared at him, saying she wouldn't lie about something like that. Wang Han promised that if it truly was his child, he would take full responsibility for both of them. She gave a short laugh, asking if he planned to do that with his delivery salary. Wang Han leaned back, unbothered, saying there was nothing wrong with earning an honest living. Supporting her and the baby, he said, wouldn't be a problem. But Su Chi only pressed the brakes hard. His head slammed against the mirror, and he cursed in pain, realizing she had done it intentionally. She told him to get out. They had arrived at the hospital. Inside, she warned him not to throw words like responsibility around so lightly. If her family found out he got her pregnant, it would destroy him. She sighed and told him to wait as she headed toward the operating room. When he realized what she meant, his face turned pale. She was going to end the pregnancy. He ran after her, shouting that she couldn't do this, that he would find a way to make things work. But she didn't stop. A nurse came to escort her, telling her it was time. Wang Han could only watch helplessly as she disappeared behind the doors. Inside, the doctor asked if she was ready. Su Qi remained silent. The doctor gently told her to relax, that it would all be over soon. For a moment, Su Qi hesitated, lost in thought. Outside, Wang Han waited anxiously, thinking that if she had truly decided, there was nothing he could do. But then, the door opened. To his surprise, Su Qi walked out almost immediately. He ran up to her, shocked that it was already over, wondering if surgeries were that fast these days. She simply said she was tired and asked him to drive her home. Without a second thought, Wang Han agreed, joking that he could even fly a fighter jet if needed. He took the driver's seat and drove her through the city lights toward Longwen Town, Block B. Along the way, he received a call. The voice on the line reminded him about a bidding event that night at the tower and told him the old man wanted him there personally. Wang Han replied calmly that he understood. When they arrived at the Su family estate, he gently woke Su Qi and told her they had reached. She got out, telling him to leave before her family saw him. Wang Han noticed she looked weak and offered to walk her to the road, but she refused, telling him to stay out of her business. Just then, her legs gave out, and she stumbled. Wang Han quickly caught her before she hit the ground, calling her clumsy. She glared at him and told him to repeat that, so he did with a grin. Annoyed, she pinched him hard, and he winced in pain before sighing that she was being too harsh. Still holding her, he carried her inside the house, sat her gently on the sofa, and began to bandage her twisted ankle. She told him to stop and leave, but he kept tending to her injury. At that moment, footsteps echoed through the hall. Su Qi's mother, Yang Human, and her best friend, Lin Shuefu, entered. They froze at the sight, a delivery guy tending to Su Qi's foot. Wang Han quickly explained that she had twisted her ankle, but before he could say more, Su Qi interrupted, saying that her boyfriend had come in to help her apply medicine. Wang Han's eyes widened in disbelief. Lin Shuefu gasped, repeating the word boyfriend, while Yang Human's voice rose in shock and anger as she demanded to know what Su Qi had just said, that this delivery guy was her boyfriend. The room fell into tense silence, and Wang Han could only stare, realizing things had just taken a far more complicated turn. Human's voice pierced the silence. She demanded to know what was happening and who the delivery man standing before them was. Su Qi froze, caught off guard. Her lips parted slightly, but she hesitated to answer. After a moment of silence, she explained softly that it was just a misunderstanding. She had twisted her ankle, and the delivery man had merely helped her inside. Human gave a small laugh, masking her irritation behind a forced smile. She told Su Qi that she had frightened her with that scene. Then, with a sharp undertone, she reminded her that she was soon to marry into the powerful Qin family, and that such mistakes were unaffordable. But Wang, who had stood quietly until then, finally spoke. He asked calmly what was so wrong about being a delivery man. Human's composure shattered. Her voice rose sharply as she declared that someone like him, a lowly worker, had no right to step beyond his station, let alone dare to associate with someone from their world. Her words hit like a slap. Wang's eyes darkened. His jaw tightened as he demanded to know what she had just said, but he caught himself before it escalated further. Su Qi, sensing the growing storm, quickly stepped in. She told Wang that he could leave, her voice soft but firm. Wang looked at her one last time, as if searching for a reason to stay, but she offered none. He turned silently and walked away. Human glared after him but said nothing more. Instead, she ordered Shofefu to escort Su Qi back to her room to rest, and to have the floor cleaned where, as she put it, that filthy delivery guy had stood. Shofefu obeyed quietly, though her eyes betrayed unease. Upstairs, the air between the two women grew heavy. Shuefu finally broke the silence, asking what exactly was going on between Su Qi and that man. Su Qi immediately denied any connection, but Shuefu wasn't convinced. She raised her voice, accusing her of lying, saying that the way she had looked at him had spoken volumes. Su Qi could deceive anyone, Shuefu warned, but not her. Cornered, Su Qi's composure cracked. She lowered her eyes and confessed in a trembling voice that she was pregnant with his child. Juefu froze. Her expression turned from disbelief to fury as she demanded to know if Su Qi was serious. Her voice trembled with both anger and shock as she asked why. Of all people, it had to be a delivery man. Su Qi's reply was quiet and filled with regret. She admitted that she had drunk too much that night, that it was a mistake, something that just happened, but she couldn't undo it. Sana's voice rose again. She demanded to know what Su Qi planned to do now. She warned that this couldn't stay hidden forever and reminded her of the Qin family's son she was meant to marry. But Su Qi, with trembling determination, said that she had already decided she would keep the baby. The room went still before Xuefu erupted in disbelief. She shouted that Su Qi had lost her mind. Su Qi, however, explained that she had spoken to Wang earlier that day, and he had promised to take full responsibility for the child. Sana's temper flared again. She called Su Qi delusional, telling her to wake up. She reminded her that she was the daughter of the Su family, and that Wang was just a delivery man, poor, unworthy, and powerless. If the Qin family found out, everything would be destroyed. Her shouting grew louder until Su Qi hurriedly asked her to lower her voice. She said she would handle it on her own, then asked why Xuefu had suddenly returned home. Xuefu exhaled sharply, composing herself. She explained that their grandfather had come to Jianan for a meeting with an influential businessman and planned to attend the evening's grand bidding event. She had simply come along. A pause hung between them until Sana's eyes suddenly lit up with a dangerous glint. She said she had just thought of a brilliant idea. When Su Qi asked what it was, Xuefu leaned closer and said that if her secret ever came out, she could simply claim that the delivery man had forced her. The words made Su Qi's stomach turn. She replied coldly that only someone like Xuefu could come up with something that vile. Meanwhile, outside the villa district, Wang stood on the roadside, frustrated that there wasn't a single taxi in sight. As he muttered to himself, a sleek black limousine slowed to a stop in front of him. The door opened, revealing an elderly man in a formal suit. The man bowed respectfully and introduced himself as Ling Qingyun, chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. He had been sent to escort Wang to the bidding event. Wang blinked in surprise, but then remembered his grandfather's arrangements. He stepped into the car and told Ling that before the event, he needed a shower and a change of clothes. Ling nodded immediately and said he would take care of everything. That evening, under the glittering lights of the grand hall, Wang arrived, sharp and composed, his presence commanding attention. He glanced around at the vast crowd and quietly thought to himself how many powerful figures had gathered there. Among them, Sana's sharp eyes caught him. Recognizing him instantly, she approached with a half smirk. She asked what a delivery man like him was doing there. Before he could explain, she cut him off, assuming he was working part-time at the event. Wang shook his head, but Xuefu interrupted again, ordering him to follow her. Her tone left no room for refusal. In a secluded corner, she turned on him with fierce intensity. She warned him that Su Qi, her closest friend, was pregnant with his child. If he dared to run away from his responsibility, she swore he would regret it. Wang froze, her words striking deep. He asked in disbelief if Su Qi hadn't already ended the pregnancy. Xuefu snapped back, saying that no such thing had happened. Su Qi had decided to keep the baby. Wang's thoughts raced. He remembered the day before, the surgery that hadn't taken place. His mind spun in confusion and disbelief. Xuefu stepped closer, her voice rising as she warned him again that if he tried to escape this, she would make sure he paid the price. Then, to make her point painfully clear, she drove her heel hard into his foot before turning and walking away. Wang stood still, stunned, as the announcement echoed across the hall. The host declared that the bidding event was about to begin. Wang's heart pounded. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. Su Qi hadn't gone through with the surgery. He told himself he needed to finish the event quickly and find her. An assistant approached, bowing politely. He introduced himself as Wang's assigned aide, sent by Chairman Ling. Wang nodded briskly and said they should head in. The bidding was about to start. The heavy doors swung open, and a confident voice filled the hall. A man strode in, declaring that the night's prize project, the new district development, would belong to the Qin family. He warned everyone to show respect or deal with the consequences. Wang glanced at his assistant and asked who that was. The assistant quietly explained that it was Qin Lei, the eldest young master of the Qin family, one of the wealthiest in Jiangnan and Wang's chief rival tonight. Wang's expression turned cold. He muttered that the man didn't look like much of a rival at all. The assistant whispered that the Qins were determined to win, planning to use this project to aid the struggling Su family, the same family Su Qi belonged to. He mocked Qin Lei under his breath, saying he was nothing but a spoiled rich man pretending to have power. Wang's eyes narrowed as realization struck. The Qin family, they were the ones engaged to Su Qi. The bidding began. The host announced the next item, Lot 03, the most sought-after project in the district. Murmurs spread through the crowd as Qin Lei confidently placed a bid of 5 billion. Everyone expected no competition. Whispers rippled through the hall about the Qin and Su families' alliance and how no one would dare challenge them. But then, calmly and without hesitation, Wang raised his hand and increased the bid to 6 billion. The hall fell silent. Heads turned. Shocked voices erupted, wondering who would dare defy the Qin family. Some called him reckless. Others said he must not be from Jiangnan to be so bold. At the front, Qin Lei's face darkened with fury. He slammed his hand on the table and demanded to know who this man was, and whether he was deliberately looking for trouble. The hall was silent for a moment after Qin Lei's furious outburst. Wang met his glare calmly and said that bidding was open to everyone. The highest bidder would win. and that was the only rule that mattered. Qinlei's jaw tightened as he demanded if Wang hadn't heard him clearly. The Qin family wanted this project. Wang replied evenly that he had heard him, but asked what that had to do with him. The audience stirred in disbelief. They whispered among themselves, shocked that someone dared to speak to the Qin family that way. Qinlei's anger flared hotter. He shouted his next bid, 700 million. Before his words could even settle, Wang countered with 800 million, his tone steady, unshaken. The contrast between Wang's composure and Qinlei's fury only deepened the humiliation. Unable to bear it, Qinlei stormed forward, shouting that in Jiangnan City, the Qin family was the law. Whatever they wanted, they got. He grabbed Wang by the collar, trying to assert control, but Wang's expression remained cold and unbothered. In that moment, Qinlei looked more like a spoiled child than a man of power. Seething, Qinlei shouted another bid, 900 million, and sneered that Wang must have a death wish if he kept going. But Wang simply gave a faint, amused smile and raised it again, to 1 billion. The crowd gasped. The number echoed through the hall like thunder. Qinlei snapped. Cursing, he lunged forward, raising his fist and shouting that he would make Wang pay, that he would chop him up and feed him to the dogs. But before he could even finish the sentence, Wang's punch landed first. The impact sent Qinlei flying backward, crashing to the ground. For a moment, no one moved. Then the Qin family's guards rushed in. Wang grabbed the nearest chair and swung it with force. One guard went down instantly. Another charged, but Wang's kick caught him across the face. Within seconds, 3 guards were on the floor, groaning in pain. Qinlei, sprawled and disoriented, shouted that Wang had just signed his death warrant. But Wang's voice cut through his threats sharply, telling him that if anyone was being hit, it was because they deserved it. He kicked one of the fallen guards toward Qinlei, sending the man tumbling straight onto his master. The two collapsed together in a heap. Wang glanced around the hall, his voice calm but commanding, asking if anyone else wanted to follow Qinlei's lead. The host, trembling, quickly said no. Wang turned to his assistant and ordered the funds to be transferred immediately. He added that he had other matters to attend to and was leaving. The assistant bowed deeply, replying with a respectful "Yes, young master." As Wang walked out, the murmurs of disbelief followed behind him like an echo of awe and fear. Elsewhere, Xuefu stood before her grandfather in a quiet room. Her tone was curious and slightly impatient as she asked why he had called her there in such a hurry. She said she had even missed the auction. Her grandfather replied in a measured voice that someone important was about to arrive. He warned her not to speak carelessly. He hadn't yet figured out this person's tempi wangant. Xuefu frowned slightly, wondering aloud what kind of person could make her grandfather act so cautious. A guard entered and announced that the auction had ended. Xuefu immediately asked if the Qin family had won, but the man shook his head and said the project had gone to someone else. Her grandfather simply nodded, saying he understood. But Xuefu couldn't believe it. She said that project had been practically guaranteed for the Qin family. Who would dare take it from them? Her grandfather turned to her and said quietly that the man they had been waiting for was precisely the one who had just done it. Xuefu muttered that whoever he was, he sounded incredibly arrogant. She excused herself, saying she needed to make a quick call and stepped into the corridor. As she walked, she thought quickly about the implications. If the Qin family hadn't won the bid, it meant their cooperation with the Su family might fall through. That couldn't happen. She needed to warn Sanu right away. Lost in thought, she turned a corner and bumped straight into someone. Startled, she looked up and shouted angrily, asking if he could even watch where he was going. When she recognized Wang, her irritation deepened. She called him a filthy delivery man and told him to move aside. Wang said something back sharply, but she ignored him and hurried off, already pulling out her phone. She was too focused on calling Sanu to notice the cold look that lingered on Wang's face. Moments later, Wang stepped into the meeting room. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Xuefu's grandfather rose to his feet and greeted him respectfully as young master. Wang nodded slightly and said that business at the auction was taken care of. Then, with mild curiosity, he asked about the woman who had stormed past him earlier. Her grandfather smiled and explained that she was his granddaughter, Sanu, unmarried, in good health, and someone who had long admired him. Wang raised an eyebrow and said with disbelief that she wanted to meet him. The old man, slightly nervous, continued. He said Sanu was the young lady of the Su family, one of the most capable women of her generation, though often overlooked because her family favored sons. Originally, he explained, the Qin and Su families had planned to form a marriage alliance once the Qins secured the district project, but Wang's intervention had changed everything. Wang listened silently, then asked what Sanu's daily life was like. He wanted to know if she had ever been in a relationship. Her grandfather shook his head, saying her upbringing had been strict and her personality stubborn. As far as he knew, she had never had a boyfriend. Wang smirked faintly at that, but before the conversation could continue, his phone rang. When he saw the name on the screen, a hint of surprise crossed his face. It was Sanu. He answered, and her voice came softly through the phone. She asked if he had some time and said she wanted to meet. Wang agreed immediately, asking where she was so he could come find her. He stood up, told the old man he was leaving, and asked him to report back to his grandfather. The old man bowed again, but before Wang could go, he mentioned that his granddaughter had graduated from the Royal Academy in London, the same as Wang waved it off politely, saying they could talk about that later, and left. By the river, the cool night breeze rippled over the water as Sonu sat quietly on a bench, lost in thought. Wang approached from behind and sat beside her. His tone was calm as he told her not to worry. He would take responsibility for both her and the baby. If she wanted, they could register their marriage immediately. Sonu looked at him skeptically, asking if he could even afford to support them. Wang smiled faintly and asked what there was that he couldn't afford. She raised her wrist and showed him her watch, asking if he knew how much it cost. Wang glanced at it once and named the exact model, material, and price without hesitation. Sonu was stunned. She asked sarcastically how much a delivery man could possibly earn, how many years he would have to work without eating or drinking to buy something like that. Wang leaned back casually and told her not to worry. He promised that she and the child would never lack anything, even joked lightly that he could handle 3 children if needed. Sonu rolled her eyes and asked if it would kill him not to brag for once. But before she could say more, her phone rang again. On the other end, someone urged her to come home quickly. Jin Hao was waiting to discuss the wedding. Her expression shifted. She hung up and turned to Wang, asking if he could take her home. He smiled and said it would be his pleasure. A moment later, the two rode back together on his motorbike, the city lights glinting off the river behind them. When they reached the mansion, Sonu stepped off and entered. Human was sitting on the sofa and immediately demanded to know where she had been. She said Jin Hao had been waiting for a long time. Sonu quietly said she had gone out for a walk, but Human's eyes narrowed when she noticed Wang outside the door. She asked sharply why Sonu had brought someone back, reminding her that her wedding with Jin Hao was soon, and that Jin Hao had come to discuss the details himself. Inside, the air grew heavy once more as Jin Hao, the second young master of the Qin family, turned his cold eyes toward her. The moment grew tense as Su Qi's mother declared that the Qin family's cooperation with the Su family would have to wait, now that they hadn't won the bid. Jin Hao, however, brushed it off. He said it didn't matter. They could get married first, and everything else could be discussed later. His expression made his true intentions clear, and his words carried arrogance rather than affection. Human tried to persuade Su Qi, reminding her that the Qin family had promised 1 billion in funding the moment the marriage was sealed. But Su Qi refused to listen. She said firmly that she wouldn't marry him. Her words stunned everyone. Jin Hao froze, unable to believe what he had heard, while Human shouted at her daughter in anger and disbelief. Before anyone could interrupt, Su Qi spoke again, saying she wouldn't marry Jin Hao because she was already pregnant. The entire room fell silent. Then, chaos erupted. Human shouted in shock, demanding if Su Qi even knew what she was saying. When she realized Su Qi meant she was carrying the child of a delivery man, her outrage doubled. She accused her daughter of losing her mind, but Su Qi stood her ground. She said she didn't want to marry into the Qin family, that she just needed time. She could help the Su family herself. Human, furious beyond reason, raised her hand to slap Su Qi, but before her hand could strike, Wang caught her wrist midair. His voice was steady as he asked what was so wrong about being a delivery man. Had he stolen from their family or destroyed their honor? He said that selling one's daughter for money was what truly lacked shame. Human tried to pull her hand free, shouting insults at him, calling him filthy. Jin Hao stepped forward, throwing his own insults at Su Qi, saying he had thought she was decent, but now saw her as shameless for letting a delivery man touch her. His words turned vile as he threatened her, but before he could finish, Ram's fists struck his face, sending him crashing to the floor. Ram's voice cut through the chaos. He said that Su Qi was pregnant with his child, and that made her his woman. No one had the right to humiliate her. Jin Hao, enraged, staggered up, grabbed an ashtray, and shouted that he would kill him. He charged forward, but Wang calmly told Su Qi to stand behind him. When Jin Hao attacked, Wang dodged with ease and countered. His kick landed hard, followed by a powerful punch that sent Jin Hao flying again. He told him that anyone daring to touch his woman would face consequences. Then, straddling Jin Hao, Wang struck him again and again until the man's face was bloodied and unrecognizable. Moments later, the Su family elders rushed in, shouting about who dared to cause trouble. Su Qi's grandfather demanded an explanation and asked if it was true that she was pregnant with the delivery man's child. Su Qi confirmed it without hesitation. Her words caused an uproar. The relatives shouted that it was outrageous and shameful. They worried about offending the Qin family and losing everything. The old man said the child must be aborted. Jin Hao, humiliated and furious, shouted that even if she did that, he would never accept her again. She would never enter the Qin household. Su Qi's mother broke down, blaming everyone, saying it was all because she had spoiled her daughter. She cried that the Su family was finished. As the room filled with accusations and shouting, Su Qi suddenly yelled for them to stop. Her voice trembled as she begged them to quit fighting. Her body weakened, and she began to lose balance. Wang rushed forward, catching her before she could fall. He told her not to be afraid, that he would take her away from all this. Her father shouted for him to let her go, and her mother screamed threats, saying she would break his legs if he took another step. Wang turned, his eyes cold, and asked if they still called themselves human. Then, with one swift motion, he kicked a heavy table aside, breaking it in half. The entire room went silent. No one dared move. His presence was enough to freeze the air around them. Holding Su-Chi in his arms, Wang said he was taking her with him and asked if anyone had a problem with that. No one answered. No one dared. As he walked out with Su-Chi, the Su family could only watch, stunned and powerless, realizing that in front of him, their pride, their influence, and their fear all meant nothing. He then returned to his apartment in the building. Inside, Su-Chi lay down on the sofa, completely exhausted. As she did, something slipped from her purse and fell to the floor. Wang bent down and picked it up. It was a paper ID. Reading it, he realized it was her birthday that day. A faint sigh escaped him. He thought to himself that this girl, despite coming from a wealthy family, seemed pitiful. No one even remembered her birthday. With a quiet resolve, he muttered that he would show her what he could do. After all, she was his woman. Then he walked away quietly to the kitchen. About 20 minutes later, Su-Chi slowly opened her eyes. Confused, she looked around and asked where she was. At that moment, she saw Wang standing nearby with several dishes prepared on the table. He approached, carrying a bowl in his hand, and said gently that she must be hungry, so he made this especially for her. Su-Chi walked to the table and smiled, saying the food smelled amazing. Wang chuckled proudly and said that with his skills, even a princess from Dubai would cry and beg for a taste. Su-Chi rolled her eyes and replied that he could stop bragging for once. Wang grinned and told her that today she wasn't allowed to say the word die. Just then, he pulled out a small cake and placed it before her, saying softly, "Happy birthday." Su-Chi was stunned. She asked how he had known. Wang smiled and said it was amazing, wasn't it? Her eyes welled up with tears of happiness, and seeing that, Wang tapped his shoulder and told her she could cry if she wanted. After all, his shoulder was one that even international supermodels couldn't borrow, but he'd lend it to her for a while. Su-Chi laughed at his teasing and wiped her eyes. Wang urged her to try the cake. She took a bite and said it tasted good. He smiled proudly and told her to make a wish. She quietly did so, closing her eyes for a moment. After a pause, Wang asked her what she planned to do next. She reminded him of his promise to support her and the baby, and questioned if he was going to go back on his word. Wang moved closer, serious now, and said he would never break a promise. But then he asked if she really dared to marry a delivery guy like him. Without hesitation, Su-Chi stood up and said loudly that she dared. She wasn't afraid. If he couldn't support them, she'd just get remarried. Wang smiled slightly and said, "Fine, we'll register our marriage tomorrow." Su-Chi agreed immediately, saying she wasn't afraid. Wang nodded. "It's settled then." Just then, his phone rang. He excused himself, saying he needed to take the call, and stepped out onto the balcony. Answering, he heard his subordinate's tense voice asking if he was still in the city. The man warned him that Hydra was heading there to kill him. Wang asked if the source was reliable and told him not to panic. When the man confirmed Hydra had been seen near the Lane family's villa, Wang replied that he understood and would handle it tomorrow. Inside, Su-Chi was on another call with Xuefu. Her friend wished her a happy birthday, asking if she was the first to do so. Su-Chi smiled and said she was the second. Surprised, Xuefu asked who the first was, certain it couldn't be that fat guy, Qin Hao. Su-Chi said no. It was Wang. Xuefu was shocked. She cursed and asked how Su-Chi ended up involved with that delivery guy. But Su-Chi said calmly that it was a long story and told her that they planned to register their marriage tomorrow. Xuefu was stunned. She couldn't believe Su-Chi would marry a delivery guy. She demanded to know where Su-Chi was, and when Su-Chi said she was at Wang's place, Xuefu nearly panicked. Trying to stay composed, Xuefu told her to calm down and said she would find a way to fix things. She promised to talk to her influential grandfather, reminding Su-Chi that he was the one who had won that old bet. No matter what, she would ask him for help to get Su-Chi through this. Then the call suddenly cut off. Meanwhile, on the balcony, Wang was still on another call. His assistant informed him that there was one more matter. The LS princess had asked about him 2 days ago. Wang's tone sharpened as he demanded whether the assistant had told her where he was. The assistant admitted that he had, explaining nervously that if he hadn't, she would have come after him personally. Wang's anger flared. His lighter and cigarette dropped from his hand as he shouted that his assistant had sold him out. But the assistant tried to reason with him, saying that the eldest princess's status and wealth made her a perfect match for him, and that she clearly liked him. Wang snapped back, ordering him to cut the nonsense and tell him when she would arrive. But before he could get an answer, the signal broke and the call disconnected. Wang cursed under his breath, frustrated. Just then, another notification came in. He glanced at it, annoyed, but when he opened it, his expression changed. It was a message written politely and formally. "Hello, sir. I'm Lin Qingyun's granddaughter, Su-Chi. I'd like to discuss the new district project with you. Since you're new to the city, working with the Su family would make things easier. If you agree to cooperate with us, I'll do anything you ask and meet any request you make." Wang read it carefully, then made another call, this time to Su-Chi's grandfather. The old man answered respectfully, immediately apologizing. He said his granddaughter must have found Wang's contact number on his phone and that he was sorry for any trouble she caused. Wang said it was fine, but added something unexpected. He instructed the old man to prepare a sniper rifle and 2 bulls. He would come by the villa to collect them the next day. Before ending the call, he also told him to give Su-Chi full authority over the new district project and not to let anyone anyone else from the Su family interfere. The old man hesitated for a moment, then agreed. Su Qi was resting on the bed, talking on the phone with Shuefu. She happily told Su Qi that she had successfully contacted a major investor who had agreed to partner with the Su family on the critical new district project, and the best part was that she would be placed in charge. She said they were scheduled to meet the next day to finalize the details and quickly ended the call, excited for the meeting. Just then, Wang Han entered the room. He noticed her cheerful demeanor and asked what had made her so happy. Su Qi casually dismissed his curiosity, telling him that even if she explained the complexities of the project, he wouldn't understand. However, he then noticed the thick book she was holding. He thought it was unexpected that she would have the habit of reading. Then he moved closer to her, his expression intense, and said flirty that there are also so many aspects of his life she simply couldn't imagine. Su Qi felt a flash of nervousness as he approached. She quickly reminded him that while she had agreed to marry him, the arrangement was still a formal necessity, implying he shouldn't misinterpret her intentions. But instead, he reached past her, grabbed the pillow behind her, and gently placed it under her head. He told her to go to bed early if she was tired and said he would sleep on the sofa. He added, as an afterthought, that reading in bed at night was not good for a pregnant woman. Su Qi settled into the bed, slightly confused and relieved. She thought he had been about to make some kind of aggressive move. She dismissed her own sudden tension as a misunderstanding of his protective intentions. The next morning, Su Qi found Wang Han engaged in a vigorous workout, doing one-handed push-ups with intense concentration. She watched him for a moment and then asked him what kind of martial art he was practicing. She mockingly asked if it was some kind of good kung fu. Wang Han stopped and told her not to be absurd. He said the technique was his dragon hand. She said she'd never heard of any martial art by that name. He corrected her, explaining that it wasn't some flashy, ordinary martial art, but an authentic Chinese killing technique, not mere display. She asked why he, a man currently delivering food, would bother learning something so specialized and dangerous. Wang Han responded with conviction. He said his father had taught him that such power was to be used responsibly, to enforce justice, and most importantly, to protect his family. Su Qi admitted that his father had given him excellent advice. She then noticed the table. Wang Han pointed out that breakfast was ready. He added that the bathroom was stocked with specific, specialized toiletries for her needs. Su Qi was slightly taken aback by his unexpected attentiveness. She commented that she hadn't realized a grown man could be so mindful of details. He simply told her that there was a lot more about him she hadn't yet seen. She then changed the subject. She told him that after breakfast, he needed to accompany her back to her family home. He asked why they needed to go there. She explained the necessity of retrieving her household registration booklet. She said they couldn't possibly get their marriage certificate without it. Wang Han looked at her, a thoughtful expression on his face. He asked if she was genuinely determined to marry a delivery guy like him. She challenged him, asking if he was scared or if he was regretting his promise. He instantly dismissed the idea of being scared, saying there was absolutely no chance of that. He stated clearly that they would get the certificate, and they would get it now. They left the apartment building shortly after. As they walked toward the bike, Su Qi asked if it wouldn't be wiser to meet their parents first. As she settled behind him, he instructed her to pull his jacket tightly and hold on. She told him to stop talking nonsense and just drive. He sped the bike onto the main road. As they rode, they briefly passed the luxury car of the Quinn family's young master, the man Su Qi was supposed to marry. The young master recognized Su Qi. He watched them pass and muttered in disgust that she had apparently spent the night with a delivery guy. He ordered his bodyguard to handle the situation. The bodyguard asked for instruction. The young master's command was sharp and clear. Seize the delivery guy and take that woman to a hotel. He was absolutely determined. The bodyguard confirmed the order, promising to gather his men and execute the plan immediately. Meanwhile, Wang Han, speeding through the traffic, spotted a van maintaining a suspicious distance behind them. He thought they were quite brazen to follow him in broad daylight. Su Qi suggested they go to her family home first to collect her things. Wang Han agreed to the change of plan, saying he needed to take care of something first. He expertly navigated the traffic and dropped her off near her home. He told her he had a matter to attend to and would return to pick her up when he was done. She agreed to send him a message. He then addressed the van that had continued its close pursuit. He thought their tracking skills were respectable. He pulled his bike off the main road, heading toward a different area entirely. He eventually arrived at a quiet, secluded villa belonging to the Lin family. He stopped the bike and immediately noticed a slight movement, someone attempting to hide near a window. He thought his suspicion of an ambush being set up was confirmed. He decided there was no time for finesse. He thought he should stretch his legs, gather all the potential enemies into one place, and solve the problem efficiently. Wang Han walked toward the villa's entrance, assembling a compact, specialized gun from parts he discreetly carried. He noted that Old Lin was indeed efficient in his preparations. As he stepped fully inside, he noticed something unusual on the bed, a bra. Suddenly, a woman emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel. This was Shuefu. She saw Wang Han, an armed stranger, and screamed in utter fear. Shuefu screamed in a mixture of terror and outrage. shouting at Wang Han to identify himself and demanding why the stinky delivery guy was in her family's villa. Wang Han didn't answer. He immediately roared, "Get down." A bullet shattered the window pane where Xuefu had been standing only a moment before. He shoved her onto the bed, covering her body with his own as the impact drove the air from her lungs. Sana, still processing the shock, yelled at him to get off her, calling him a bastard. Wang Han's face was suddenly cold and utterly serious. She was momentarily stunned by the transformation in his expression. He told her, in a low, dangerous tone, that she needed to stay quiet or she would die. Sana, terrified, asked what was happening. She saw the weapon Wang Han was holding. Wang Han ignored her, his attention fully on the window. He noted the presence of Hydra, an assassin he was familiar with, and wondered if the man truly lived up to his nine-headed reputation. He took careful aim and fired a single shot. But before he could confirm the kill, their room was attacked again. He had to throw himself and Xuefu to the side, narrowly dodging another incoming bullet that ripped through the wall. He shouted at her to stay down. Wang Han quickly scanned the room. He snatched a piece of clothing from the floor, Sana's, he realized, and threw it out of the window. He thought he detected someone lurking on the other side of the building. He realized the problem was escalating. Not only had the professional assassin Hydra shown up, but the tracking van from the Quinn family, which he had deliberately ignored, must have also been an active part of the ambush. He thought, adding the initial shooting, they certainly had a lot of guests today. He lined up his shot once more and fired. Boom. One clean shot confirmed the end of a sniper positioned in a nearby building. He muttered to himself, noting that Hydra, whom he had expected to be a serious challenge, was dispatched easily. Sana, trembling with fear, demanded to know what was going on and why he had shown up at her house with a gun. Wang Han was about to respond when another bullet struck the wall, immediately followed by the sound of rapid, blind firing directed at their room. He quickly tackled Sana, pulling both of them behind the large, sturdy sofa to dodge the barrage of bullets. As they sheltered, he picked up one of the spent shell casings and examined the markings. He recognized the distinct hexagram etched onto the warhead, the signature ammunition of a feared Eastern European assassin organization known as Abyss. He thought hooligans. He asked Xuefu when she had managed to antagonize the Eastern European criminal syndicates. Xuefu insisted she didn't know anything about it. Wang Han inwardly cursed his carelessness, regretting that he had only prepared 2 special bullets for this kind of unexpected engagement. He pondered his next move. Sana, desperate, suddenly spoke up, suggesting a possible link. She recalled that an Eastern European boss had recently attempted to purchase a highly sensitive scientific research technology from her company, and she had rejected the offer outright. Wang Han immediately realized the gravity of the new threat. He yelled, "Careful," and shoved Xuefu further down, making her dodge another shot that had aimed directly at their hiding spot. They hunkered down behind the sofa. He picked up a large, fragmented piece of mirror glass and thought it looked like a reliable weapon. He quickly darted out from behind the sofa and, with the precision of a master marksman, hurled the piece of glass with lethal power. It struck and instantly neutralized another gunman who was preparing to fire again. The shooting stopped completely. Wang Han judged the immediate area to be clear. He told Xuefu to get up, saying it was safe now. Sana, still dazed, looked at him with a mixture of terror and awe. She asked if delivering food was just a cover story, demanding to know his true identity. Wang Han told her that she didn't need to know who he was. Xuefu became insistent, threatening to tell Su Qi everything if he didn't explain. Wang Han told her that she didn't need to know who he was. Xuefu became insistent, threatening to tell Su Qi everything if he didn't explain. Wang Han ordered her to be quiet, holding a finger to his lips. He said there was still someone outside. Xuefu looked around frantically and burst into tears, asking what they were going to do. He told her not to panic and said he would go out and check. Just as he moved toward the door, 3 men, obviously the bodyguards from the Quinn family, entered the villa. One of them stared at Wang Han and questioned his presence, recognizing him as the delivery guy. Another suggested he was probably there to steal something. Wang Han walked calmly down the stairs and greeted them. "Hello?" he said, his voice completely level. Wang Han looked at the 3 men who had just entered, a mocking smile playing on his lips. He thought it was amusing that they were there to see him. The lead bodyguard, a gruff-looking man, stepped forward. He informed Wang Han that they were men of Brother Hao and asked if Wang Han understood their purpose. Wang Han feigned ignorance, asking which Brother Hao they meant and what he was supposed to have done to them. The guards scoffed, shouting that Su Qi was their Brother Hao's woman and asking how Wang Han could possibly pretend not to know what was going on after sleeping with her. The second guard insisted that Wang Han was playing dumb and loudly suggested they break his leg first. Wang Han's expression became dangerously calm. He thought, "Oh, I see." He asked them what their specific demands were. The lead guard shouted at the other 2 to seize him. The second guard rushed forward, crudely threatening Wang Han for getting involved with his sister-in-law. Wang Han moved with terrifying speed. He delivered a swift, concussive kick directly to the neck of the charging guard, dropping him instantly. Simultaneously, he spun and drove a second kick deep into the chest of the third guard. In just 2 precise movements, both men collapsed, sprawling on the floor. The lead guard froze, fear replacing his aggression. He thought, holy crap, is the barrier to entry for food delivery this high now? He realized the man was a genuine martial artist. He quickly mustered his courage, drawing a knife. He shouted that he refused to believe he couldn't handle a mere delivery guy and charged. Wang Han easily dodged the knife attack with a sharp jump. With one devastating kick, he sent both the guard's weapon and the guard himself flying through the air. At that moment, Xuefu cautiously came down the stairs. She saw the mess, the shattered glass, the furniture overturned, and the bodies lying still, and screamed in terror. The remaining guard, realizing his advantage, shouted at her to shut up. He seized the opportunity, lunging forward and grabbing Xuefu. He pulled her against him, declaring that she was now his hostage. He then shouted a threat at Wang Han. If he took another step, he would kill the girl. Xuefu, struggling violently, warned the guard that her grandfather would never forgive him if he dared touch her. Wang Han continued to walk toward them, completely unfazed. He mockingly told the guard to go ahead and carry out his threat. The guard panicked, shouting desperately for Wang Han to stop, warning him that he was serious. Wang Han simply challenged him to take action. The guard began to stammer, but before he could finish a sentence, Wang Han moved. In an instant, a blur of motion, Wang Han was directly in front of the guard, holding the knife blade between two fingers. The speed was so great the guard hadn't even registered his movement. Wang Han looked at the quivering man. He thought this little skill was pathetic, and certainly not worthy of showing off. The guard was terrified, realizing the delivery man was impossibly strong. He thought he couldn't move him an inch. Wang Han asked why the guard was hesitating to attack. The guard tried to speak, but Wang Han squeezed his two fingers. With only that slight pressure, the tough metal of the blade shattered. Both Xuefu and the guard gasped in disbelief. Wang Han grabbed the guard by the neck and lifted him effortlessly into the air. He called the man a rotten fish and shrimp, asking if he was truly worthy of fighting him. The guard, choking and desperate, begged Wang Han to listen, claiming to be a member of the Black Dragon Society. Wang Han simply dismissed the gang affiliation and threw the guard contemptuously onto the floor. The guard, writhing in pain, pleaded with Wang Han not to go down the path of crime, saying he was still young. Wang Han immediately delivered a sharp kick to the man's stomach. The guard coughed up blood. He cried out for him to stop, claiming he had an elderly mother at home and, more urgently, important information to share. Wang Han paused. He gave the guard 3 seconds to share his last words. The guard gasped out the critical piece of information. Brother Hao, the Qin family's heir, had already left to find Su Qi, and if Wang Han didn't go immediately, it would be too late. Wang Han was genuinely surprised. He shouted at the guard, asking why he hadn't shared such vital intelligence sooner. He delivered one final frustrated kick to the man's face. Just then, a knock came from the front door. A voice announced they were the police. Wang Han immediately ran toward the stairs, shouting to Xuefu that he had to go find Su Qi and leaving the rest to her. He ordered her not to mention he had been there. She quickly agreed, saying she knew exactly what to tell them. The police entered. The lead officer assured the visibly shaken Xuefu they were the police and asked what had happened, showing his identification. Xuefu immediately told them she was taking a shower when the 3 men had broken in, armed with knives. The police officer commanded his men to handcuff the 3 suspects and take them back to the station. Another officer approached the captain, reporting that 2 bodies had been found across the street, noting they did not appear to be ordinary victims. The captain, overwhelmed by the situation, simply ordered them all to be taken back. The scene shifted abruptly to a luxurious hotel room. Su Qi was cornered by Qin Hao, the heir she was supposed to marry. Qin Hao, what are you doing? Su Qi demanded. Qin Hao walked toward her with a predatory smirk. He admitted that he had drugged her wine last time and she had escaped, but this time he intended to use force. She ordered him to leave the room immediately. He dismissed her, calling her a bitch. He sneered that he had already dispatched men to capture the delivery guy and planned to kill her right in front of Wang Han later. As he advanced quickly toward her, he vowed that he would have her today. Su Qi struggled against Qin Hao, who had her pinned on the hotel bed. She ordered him to release her, but he just smirked. He told her she could scream all she wanted. No one would come to save her. He mockingly dismissed the stinky delivery guy as incapable of saving even himself and declared he would take her now. He was about to forcefully grab her when a kick landed squarely on his face. Wang Han had arrived. Qin Hao was sent tumbling across the room. Wang Han stood over the stunned heir. He said that anyone who dared to touch his woman was clearly tired of living. Qin Hao scrambled up, shouting at the delivery guy for daring to strike him. He demanded to know if Wang Han was aware of his father's identity. Wang Han walked slowly toward him. He said it didn't matter who his father was. The man would pay a price for having such a son. Qin Hao, gathering his courage, boasted that his father was the wealthiest man in the city and warned Wang Han that opposing him meant death. He then tried to punch Wang Han. Wang Han simply blocked the blow and easily threw Qin Hao across the room again. He thought the nobody had no right to shout at him. He then rushed to Su Qi, immediately checking on her. He consoled her, telling her not to be afraid. Su Chi said she was relieved he had come. Wang Han assured her that as long as he was there, no one would dare lay a hand on her. Chen Hao, defeated and furious, retreated from the room, shouting a threat that the delivery guy should wait and see what was coming to him. Su Chi composed herself and asked what the time was. Wang Han was surprised by her sudden shift in focus, having barely noticed Chen Hao's frantic exit. Su Chi said she had nearly forgotten her important meeting and asked Wang Han to accompany her to the company. He readily agreed, saying he would go with her wherever she needed to be. They soon arrived at the Shenghua Group building. The person who answered Su Chi's call confirmed her arrival and said CEO Liu was already waiting in the conference room. Su Chi acknowledged the message and headed straight in. She arrived, apologizing for her delay. The CEO Liu looked past Su Chi at Wang Han, recognizing him instantly. Liu almost addressed Wang Han as young master. Wang Han quickly stepped closer to Liu, interrupting the moment. He smiled and greeted her casually, calling her old classmate and noting what a coincidence it was to meet her there. Su Chi was startled to realize Wang Han and CEO Liu were classmates. Liu quickly understood Wang Han's signal and played along, agreeing it was quite a coincidence. Su Chi, still surprised, invited CEO Liu to be seated. Liu suggested they get straight to the point of the meeting. Su Chi agreed and was about to begin the project discussion. Just then, the Su family patriarch, the grandfather, and his 3 sons entered the room. The grandfather warmly greeted Liu, saying her presence made their humble company glorious. He explained he had heard they were discussing the new district project and had rushed over without even eating. The old man then turned his attention to Su Chi, questioning why she had brought so many people to such an important business occasion. Su Chi stood her ground, reminding her grandfather that she was in charge of negotiating the project, and it was her prerogative to decide who attended. Her father angrily shouted at her, asking when it became her place to speak on behalf of the family company. He demanded she surrender her seat to her brother and go pour water for the guests. Her brother, Su Li, stepped forward, introducing himself to Liu. He stated that Su Chi's words held no weight in the company and that Liu should discuss the project solely with him. Su Chi insisted the project belonged to her, but the grandfather quickly interrupted her, demanding again that she go pour water for Liu. Her uncle added that she should leave all company affairs to Su Li from now on, reminding her that she would soon be married anyway. Wang Han chose that moment to interject. He questioned why they were so eager to seize the project when it had clearly been assigned to Su Chi. The grandfather roared at Wang Han to shut up, demanding to know who the hell he was to speak in their company. Su Chi's uncle snickered, observing that Su Chi was so ambitious she had taken a delivery guy as a boyfriend. He made a rude comment about her parents, questioning the father's judgment. Su Li added fuel to the fire, mentioning that he had heard his sister was pregnant by the delivery guy. The grandfather exploded, shouting at Su Chi to get the low-level rubbish out of the room immediately. He declared that neither Wang Han nor any dog was allowed into their company again. Su Chi finally shouted back at her grandfather. She fiercely defended Wang Han, pointing out that he earned his money honestly, neither stealing nor robbing, and that the grandfather had no right to speak about a person that way. The grandfather was about to shout again, but Wang Han stood up, his voice loud and commanding. He told the bunch of buzzards that he was making it clear. Only Su Chi would be in charge of this project. The grandfather dismissed him as a mere delivery man, asking who he thought he was to flex his power. Wang Han turned to Liu, a slight smile returning. He asked his old classmate to do him a favor. He stated unequivocally that Su Chi was his fiancée, and therefore the project could only be handled by her. Liu immediately agreed. No problem, she said. The 3 male members of the Su family were collectively shocked. Su Li desperately tried to intervene, arguing that Su Chi was unfamiliar with many company matters and suggesting the project would be better off with him. Liu remained firm. The grandfather then tried a different tactic, reminding Liu of their standing. Liu interrupted him, stating that their company specifically required Su Chi to be in charge. She said that if the Su company couldn't agree to that condition, they would simply find other partners. The grandfather immediately backed down, asking where Liu's boss was so he could speak to him. Liu firmly replied that she was solely responsible for the matter and that the grandfather was not qualified to see her boss. Disappointment clearly etched on his face. The grandfather accepted the rejection. Su Chi's uncle quickly intervened, assuring Liu that they would meet her requirements and the project would be handed over to Su Chi. The grandfather quickly agreed, saying as long as the cooperation was secured, letting Su Chi manage it was fine. Liu smiled and said they should sign the contract that day. She suggested that she and Su Chi would discuss the specific details and the others could leave. The grandfather awkwardly agreed and led his sons out of the room. Su Li complained to his father about the outcome, but the uncle silenced him, saying they needed to leave first. Wang Han watched them go. He thought the whole bunch was a disgrace, bringing shame upon themselves. Liu turned to Su Chi, handing her the contract. She asked Su Chi to review it first, and Su Chi agreed. Meanwhile, in a separate Su family meeting room, Su Li asked his father to speak privately. Su Li's father, in a hushed tone, revealed a secret. He told his son that Su Qi was not his biological child. Su Li was shocked. The uncle, who was also present, wondered if his sister-in-law had cheated. Su Li's father explained that he and his wife could not conceive, and Su Qi was adopted. He lamented that she was now embarrassing the family by dating a delivery guy. Su Li boldly asked who Su Qi's biological parents were. The father said he didn't know. They must have died a long time ago, adding that the only thing left with her was a worthless old pendant. Su Li pressed his father for their actual plan. His father told him to wait. He said they would allow Su Qi to take over the project first, and when the time was right, he had his own plan to snatch the project away from her. The three men finalized their plan against snatch the project away from her. The three men finalized their plan against Su Qi. Wang Han emerged from the Shanghua Group building, spotting the two security guards at the entrance. He asked them for a light for a cigarette. One guard, seeing his dress clothes, asked if he had been there for a job interview. Wang Han replied that he was a delivery man. The guard then jokingly declared that they were now sworn enemies, as delivery riders and security guards were often at odds. Wang Han laughed, thinking their rivalry was amusing. Suddenly, both guards snapped to attention. One of them said that CEO Su was approaching. The other guard immediately spoke highly of Su Qi, saying she was the most beautiful woman in the company and provided him with daily motivation. Wang Han inwardly scoffed, thinking their devotion was pathetic. He wondered if one woman was really enough to make them act that way. The guard told him to stop pretending. A mere delivery man could never measure up to them. Su Qi arrived and thanked the guards for their hard work. The first guard preened, boasting that Miss Su had personally thanked him. The second guard congratulated his colleague on his luck. Wang Han put a hand on the first guard's shoulder, telling him not to get too excited. The guard then put his hand on Wang Han's shoulder, offering some sincere advice. He told Wang Han that even though he was a delivery man, he still needed to have dreams. Su Qi interrupted the conversation, asking Wang Han to get into her car. The two security guards stared in shock. Wang Han sat into the car, telling the guard he would remember his advice and would see him later. The two guards were utterly dumbfounded by the sight of the delivery man getting into the CEO's luxury car. As they drove, Wang Han noted Su Qi's happy expression and concluded that the meeting must have gone well. She confirmed the success, giving credit to Sana, who had found the big boss behind the project. She said she felt she had to thank the big boss personally. Wang Han agreed, telling her she should thank him very much. Su Qi then shifted the topic, saying she had contacted a friend at the Civil Affairs Bureau. She confirmed they would go there the next morning to obtain their marriage certificate. Wang Han agreed to the plan. She then explained her motivation, saying she was only marrying him because she did not want her child to be born without a father. She then stated that after the baby was born, she would give him 30,000 yuan every month. Wang Han inwardly smirked. He asked if she considered this an act of supporting him. She said he could think whatever he liked. Wang Han told her that if she truly wanted to support him, 30,000 yuan was far too little. She warned him not to push his luck, asking how much he made delivering food per month that 30,000 yuan was insufficient. As they approached her building, Wang Han noted that she drove the road very well, suggesting she had already memorized the route. She told him she had navigation and could go wherever she pleased. Wang Han asked her to pause the conversation, saying he needed to take a private call. He answered the phone and asked his caller, his family's patriarch, the old man, what the problem was. The old man reported that a large batch of goods had been intercepted by the Black Dragon Society's headquarters and had been taken to their compound. He ordered Wang Han to deal with the situation. Wang Han confirmed he would have it resolved before noon the next day. The old man then changed the subject, asking if the rumors about his marriage were true. Wang Han shouted into the phone, demanding to know who had leaked the news. The old man admitted that Lin Qinyun had told him. He then questioned why Wang Han didn't choose a daughter from the many powerful, wealthy families available, but instead let a girl from the Su family derail his work. Wang Han tried to explain himself, but the old man cut him off. He said there was no need for explanations. He warned Wang Han that his elder sister would be coming to question him in person the next day, and he should prepare himself. Wang Han cried out, asking the old man not to be so unfair, knowing that if his sister showed up, he would not survive her interrogation. The call suddenly disconnected. Wang Han shouted hello, hello in frustration. He then vowed that he would get revenge on the old man by pulling out his oxygen tube. Su Qi asked him what was wrong. He calmly told her it was nothing and suggested they go inside. As they entered the apartment, Su Qi noticed some debris on the floor and asked what it was. Wang Han quickly dismissed it as nothing, claiming it was just a discarded greeting card from someone. He said she must be hungry after her busy day and offered to cook dinner. Su Qi agreed. She sat down, thinking how surprisingly nice it felt to have a house husband taking care of things at home. Wang Han told her to relax, saying the meal would be ready soon. She thanked him for his hard work. He thought that for the sake of his wife and child, it was no hardship. After all, he was now a house husband being supported by someone. She remained silent, letting the comment pass. The next day, they were leaving the Civil Affairs Bureau building. Wang Han said that from that moment on, he had officially become a family man. Su Qi noted his relaxed mood and asked what his plans were for the rest of the day. Was he going to deliver food? He replied that he had no orders, and since he finally had some branded clothes, he needed to go out and play with some girls. Su Qi immediately bristled, angrily telling him he was a lost cause and could do whatever he wanted and play with some girls. Wang Han inwardly noted that even married people could still have bad tempers. He then reminded himself to carry out the mission given by the old man. He thought he needed to finish the task next time. He went towards the Black Dragon Group compound, mentally noting that the Black Dragon Society, which had started as a local gang, had successfully rebranded itself. He observed that their current criminal enterprise mostly involved reselling used cars, collecting debts, and lending money. He thought he would soon find out how capable they truly were. Wang Han walked confidently into the building. A bald man immediately addressed him, asking what his business was there. Wang Han stated plainly that he was there for debt collection. He stood there, completely unmoving. Another person nearby laughed, thinking Wang Han was confused, saying their company handled that kind of business and telling him to go to the second floor. Wang Han corrected him, saying he was here specifically to collect a debt from Bald Liu. The two nearby guards shouted at him, asking if he knew where he was and where he thought he was standing. One guard rushed toward Wang Han, thinking he had a death wish, and threw a kick with full force. Wang Han easily dodged the clumsy attack. The guard swore in frustration. Wang Han retaliated with a sharp kick to the man's other leg, sending him crashing to the floor, where Wang Han finished the exchange with a kick to the face, knocking him out cold. The second guard charged, but Wang Han delivered a single devastating kick that sent the man flying. The first guard, now lying on the ground, stared up at Wang Han in terror. Wang Han spoke to him with chilling composure, asking if he would now take him to see Bald Liu. The scene shifted to Bald Liu's private room where he was drinking wine with a girl. He poured the wine onto his chest and urged the girl to lick it off. The girl complied, saying it tasted wonderful. Bald Liu told her to drink more and promised to feed her later. The girl teasingly called him bad. Just then, a terrified guard burst into the room without knocking. Bald Liu angrily asked the guard why he hadn't knocked, reminding him that he was busy. He then demanded to know who dared to trespass on his territory. The guard tried to explain, but before he could finish, a body the flying guard Wang Han had kicked came flying through the doorway and landed near them. Bald Liu, the girl, and the guard were all shocked. Bald Liu screamed, outraged that someone dared to enter his territory this way. He reached for the pistol tucked into his waistband. Suddenly, a small black object came flying into the room. Bald Liu stared at it, recognizing the distinctive shape. He realized it was a black card from the 10 Lords. The guard who had been kneeling on the floor whispered in awe that the 10 Lords was a terrorist organization formed by 10 underworld bosses. Wang Han entered the room. Bald Liu, instantly terrified, dropped his weapon and fell to his knees. He stammered, addressing Wang Han as young Master Zhu, asking if it was truly him who had come to visit. Wang Han smiled faintly. He thought it was gratifying that even after years out of the game, some people still remembered his name. Bald Liu scrambled forward, offering Wang Han a cigarette with trembling hands. He asked what instructions the young master had. Wang Han took the cigarette but made Bald Liu light it for him. He said he had heard that Boss Liu had swallowed a batch of goods recently. Bald Liu insisted it was all a terrible misunderstanding. Wang Han simply said he admired Bald Liu's courage for daring to steal from someone the 10 Lords knew. Bald Liu immediately promised to return the goods. However, Bald Liu's hand subtly reached for the pistol at his back. Wang Han watched the movement. He thought about the saying that once the black card appeared, all ghosts and monsters would be killed. Bald Liu pointed the gun at Wang Han, saying that since young Master Zhu would not give him a way out and had come to his territory alone, Wang Han shouldn't blame him for being rude. In a flash, Wang Han moved. He flicked the cigarette out of his own hand. The cigarette had such incredible velocity and force that it changed trajectory, tearing through Bald Liu's hand as he was pulling the pistol. Wang Han then grabbed the black card. He stated that anyone who pointed a gun at him was dead. With that, he threw the black card with devastating precision, striking Bald Liu directly in the neck. Bald Liu slumped dead. The girl screamed at the sight of the murder. The guards shouted that their boss was killed. Guards rushed into the room, shouting that the boss was dead. Wang Han looked at the arriving guards. He gave them two choices. First, give him the goods, and one of them could become the new boss. Second, give him the goods, and they could all join Bald Liu in death. One of the guards, terrified, immediately declared that the goods had been taken by the former boss and had nothing to do with him. He swore to follow young Master Zhu's lead from that moment on. Wang Han approved of his quick thinking. He ordered the new leader to protect the goods. Just then, Qin Hao and his bodyguard arrived outside the Black Dragon Group headquarters. The bodyguard expressed strong reservations, warning Qin Hao that Wang Han might be more than he seemed and urging caution. Qin Hao immediately dismissed the warning, saying he wouldn't think twice and was determined to get Wang Han today. He announced he was there to meet the boss of the Black Dragon Society, offering any amount of money to have the delivery man killed. Just as the office was beginning to settle into its new order, Qin Hao stormed in like a thunderclap, bellowing for old Lu. His eyes scanned the room, now clearly under new management, and his voice grew sharper with anger as he demanded to know the whereabouts of his former boss. Facing him across the desk was Wen Long, the new leader, whose calm presence seemed to only fuel Qin Hao's fury. Ignoring the man entirely, Qin Hao declared he was there to meet Lu for a critical business deal. Wen Long, unshaken and composed, leaned back and informed him that Lu was no longer around. The Black Dragon Society was now under his command. Surprised, but adapting quickly, Qin Hao offered his congratulations and got straight to the point. He wanted someone dead, and he was willing to pay a staggering 50 million for it. Long's interest was piqued, and he asked who the target was. Qin Hao, with a mix of anger and indignation, revealed that the person he wanted eliminated was nothing more than a delivery guy. Wen Long couldn't hide his scoff at such an absurd proposition. 50 million to kill a delivery man. He told Qin Hao he must be joking. That only made Qin Hao's rage flare hotter. He seethed, recounting how this delivery man had beaten him mercilessly and stolen the woman he loved, and for that, he had to die. Amused by the sheer audacity and the unexpected fortune landing at his doorstep, Wen Long agreed to take on the job, telling Qin Hao not to get so worked up over a mere delivery guy. Qin Hao, however, insisted on going along, claiming he knew where the man lived and wanted to witness his demise. Wen Long didn't hesitate. With a confident gesture, he gathered his men, announcing they would all assist Qin Hao in exacting his revenge. His subordinates echoed with unwavering loyalty. Meanwhile, at our boy's food delivery center, Wang Han had returned to his routine. Dressed in his uniform, he was greeted by co-workers who noticed his absence and mentioned that the boss had been asking for him. Wang Han, cool and unbothered, told them he would check in after finishing a few deliveries. He lit a cigarette and mounted his red motorcycle, radiating effortless confidence. But as he rode through the streets, a black van suddenly swerved in front of him. The side door slid open, and Qin Hao emerged, swinging a heavy metal pipe, his eyes blazing with rage. He gloated, sure that Wang Han had not expected to be found so quickly. Wang Han stood, unflinching, and admitted that the confrontation was a bit unexpected. Blind with fury, Qin Hao charged, shouting that he would make Wang Han kneel and cry. But Wang Han moved like water, sidestepping the clumsy attack without effort. In a swift, almost playful motion, he flicked his still-lit cigarette directly into Qin Hao's open mouth. Pain and shock contorted Qin Hao's face as he cried out. Before he could recover, Wang Han pressed his advantage, delivering a knee strike to the stomach, then a brutal elbow to the back, taunting him about kneeling. The assault was relentless, and Qin Hao crumpled to his knees, gasping in agony. From the ground, Qin Hao barked at Wen Long, urging him to act and reminding him he wasn't hired to just stand by. Long emerged from the van with his men, lighting a cigar and wearing a smug grin, curious if all delivery guys were as formidable as this one. Qin Hao, seething from the ground, issued a cruel command: do not kill Wang Han quickly, make him suffer a fate worse than death. Long stepped closer, resting a familiar hand on Wang Han's shoulder and condescendingly calling him friend. That instant, as Wang Han turned, Long's smirk dissolved into sheer terror. Recognition dawned, and panic replaced arrogance. Wang Han's eyes flared with fury as he demanded to know who he was calling friend. In a swift, brutal motion, he grabbed Long by the head and slammed his face onto his own burning cigar, leaving him screaming in agony. Standing over the terror-stricken gang leader, Wang Han mocked his brief moment of authority, asking if a few minutes as boss had made him arrogant. Wen Long stammered, finally addressing Wang Han by his true title, Ninth Young Master, apologizing profusely, swearing he would have never dared appear had he known whom he faced. Qin Hao, bewildered by the title, dismissed it and attempted to order Long to attack. Terrified, Long hesitated, and Wang Han pivoted his wrath toward Qin Hao. With a vicious kick, he sent Qin Hao crashing onto the pavement. Stepping on his fallen form, Wang Han issued a cold warning: never provoke him again if he valued his life. Qin Hao, writhing in pain, stammered his understanding. Wang Han's glare hardened as he reminded him that Zhou was his wife, and that he should keep far away. This time, only a broken hand, but next time, he would not be so lucky. He drove his point home by grinding his shoe into Qin Hao's bandaged head, eliciting a scream. With the situation under control, Wang Han pulled out his phone, muttering about running late again. Behind him, Wen Long and his men remained silent, respectful. Qin Hao, dazed, struggled to his feet, yelling at Long, bewildered that they couldn't even handle a delivery guy. Wang Han turned back, expression grim, explaining that the man Qin Hao mocked as a delivery guy was someone no one could afford to offend. Continuing his rounds, Wang Han arrived at a dilapidated apartment building. Its grimy hallway stretched ahead as he carried a food package, remarking on its decay. He found the right door, knocking politely. A disheveled man with messy blue hair answered, wearing a menacing expression. Wang Han asked professionally if payment would be cash or code. The man said cash. As he fumbled, Wang Han's suspicion grew. A glance into the dark apartment confirmed it. A terrified woman, clothes torn, signaled desperately for help, and before she could cry out, another man struck her, demanding silence. Wang Han's demeanor shifted instantly. The blue-haired man shoved cash at him and slammed the door, declaring it none of his business. Wang Han's demeanor shifted instantly. Panic spread between the two criminals. They had been seen. One quickly said they should kill him, and the other agreed. Wang Han placed a hand on his head, muttering about the misfortune of this encounter. The door suddenly swung open. The blue-haired man lunged at him with a knife, ready to kill. Wang Han, poised and unshaken, prepared to handle yet another threat. Wang Han didn't hesitate. With a swift, precise kick, he sent the blue-haired man flying across the room, disarming him in one fluid motion. Standing in the doorway, Wang Han let out a low sigh, muttering to himself that even a routine delivery could suddenly turn into a fight. Inside, the second kidnapper's eyes widened as he realized the delivery man was no ordinary civilian. He was trained, deadly, and utterly composed. Fueled by anger, the man grabbed a machete and lunged at Wang Han, screaming for his death. Wang Han, unfazed, caught the attacker's wrist effortlessly and let out a mocking laugh, ridiculing his pathetic skills before delivering a brutal elbow that sent him crashing to the floor, crying out for help. With both threats neutralized, Wang Han calmly kicked the door shut behind him and turned his gaze toward the room's sole captive. A young woman, terrified and tied to the bed, weakly pleaded for help. Wang Han approached her carefully, untying her bonds while speaking gently, asking if she could walk. When she nodded, he draped his jacket over her shoulders with quiet courtesy. "The police are on their way," he said, "and I can call your family to pick you up." She agreed gratefully. Wang Han explained that he would step outside briefly to secure the two kidnappers, leaving her with her phone for safety. Moments later, Wang Han stood over the two men, tied back to back on the floor. "You got what you deserve for running into me," he said flatly. The rescued woman, impressed by his skill and composure, stepped closer. "Thank you for saving me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Xiaowan Jing." Wang Han bowed lightly. "No trouble at all," he replied, introducing himself in turn. Xiaowan Jing held her phone, presumably after contacting her family, but her expression changed as an incoming call interrupted her. She handed the device back to Wang Han, who answered with professional calm. The voice on the other end was furious, a woman demanding to know if he had become bold enough to marry without informing his family. Wang Han froze, panic washing over his features as he recognized the caller, his older sister. She barked instructions for him to meet her in Jiangning that evening and to bring his fiancée. All he could do was stammer an agreement. The call ended abruptly, leaving him muttering in exasperation about how his sister always hung up without warning. Before he could process further, the door burst open. An older man, flanked by two uniformed police officers, shouted Xiaowan Jing's name. Overjoyed, she ran into her father's arms, tears of relief spilling down her face. Wang Han remained composed, standing calmly beside the subdued kidnappers. Her father hugged her tightly, anxiously asking if she was unharmed. Xiaowan Jing reassured him and pointed to Wang Han, explaining that he had saved her. As the officers began to take the criminals away, Wang Han added, almost modestly, that he had knocked them out himself. The older man, clearly impressed, introduced himself as Xiao Tiansheng and handed Wang Han a business card. Mentally, he assessed Wang Han's power, noting the aura of someone who could only be at least a minor grandmaster. "If you ever need help in Jiangning City," he said sincerely, "call me." Wang Han accepted the card with polite humility and recognized the name, White Tiger Martial Arts Hall. Promising to visit when possible, he turned to leave. Xiao Tianxiang tried to offer him a job at the martial arts hall for 50,000 a month, convinced it would pay better than delivering food, but Wang Han declined politely. Watching him depart, Xiao Tianxiang couldn't hide his admiration, whispering about the hidden talent in such a young man. Xiaowan Jing called after him, realizing he had forgotten his jacket, but Wang Han was already gone. On the street, Wang Han returned to his motorcycle as the police loaded the criminals into their vehicle. He climbed onto his bike, thinking about how one simple delivery could cause so much trouble. With that matter handled, his mind turned to finding Suki. The engine roared to life, and he sped off toward the towering Su Group skyscraper. Inside, Suki was at her desk when a man in a blue suit appeared. "I heard from Shuo you were in trouble," he said, "and I came back immediately from overseas to help." His name was Lin Jingpeng, and despite his earnest attempt to reassure her, Zioke coldly rejected his help, explaining that the company had already handled the situation. Unfazed, he pressed on, declaring he would always stay by her side and that he had rejected countless women abroad because she was the only one in his heart. Annoyed beyond measure, Zioke demanded he address her properly as Zioke and stay away. Ignoring her, he grabbed her arm, pleading desperately for her to be his. Reaching her limit, Zioka struck him hard across the face. "Respect yourself," she said firmly, revealing the truth. She was already married and pregnant. Stunned, Lin Jingpeng held his cheek, refusing to believe her, accusing her of lying. At that exact moment, the office door opened and Wang Han entered, carrying 2 containers of food. He paused, observing the scene, silently noting the number of love rivals he seemed to have. Seizing the moment, Zioke walked over to the stunned man and scolded Wang Han lightly for not knocking, pretending he was a misbehaving employee. Wang Han played along, feigning innocence. Zioke then linked her arm with his and explained to Lin Jingpeng that Wang Han had brought her food because she couldn't go hungry while pregnant. With a confident smile, she formally introduced him as her husband. The word hung in the air, warm and final. Leaning against Wang Han, Zioke radiated calm happiness. Lin Jingpeng, utterly devastated, pointed at the couple with a trembling finger, asking if Wang Han was truly her husband. Wang Han stepped forward protectively, directing him to the door and insisting they enjoy their lunch in peace. As Lin Jingpeng attempted to protest, Wang Han's calm, unwavering tone repeated the same command, forcing him to retreat. Defeated, he stormed out, vowing he would not give up. After Lin Jingpeng finally left, probably reconsidering his life choices, Wang commented to Su Qi that his rival was not particularly impressive, noting that the man had run away before he even had the chance to do anything about it. Wang then started preparing food for both of them, moving about with domestic precision. And once the meal was ready, he pulled out a chair, made Su Qi sit, and began to serve her. Su Qi, ever logical even in personal matters, pointed out that, strictly speaking, there was no actual relationship between them, so technically, the man she just chased out could not really be called Wang's rival. Wang, playing along, remarked that it turned out to be that way, pretending as though the revelation was entirely new to him. Just as Su Qi opened her tiffin to eat, Wang stopped her with suspicious seriousness, which prompted her to ask what on earth he was doing. Wang replied that since neither of them had any feelings for each other, he would not be giving the food to her. This declaration left Su Qi baffled, and she retorted that her stomach was his doing. He was the one who had made it big, and therefore he had no right to make her a fool by withholding the food. Wang finally relented, probably realizing it was safer not to argue with a pregnant woman before lunch. While they were eating, Su Qi admitted, perhaps grudgingly, that he was truly skilled at cooking, adding that the food he made was absolutely delicious. She even teased that his cooking was so impressive that she might as well invest in opening a restaurant for him, assuming he would agree to deliver takeaway. Wang, however, replied with dramatic arrogance, asking whether she thought just anyone deserved to eat the food he cooked. Su Qi became irritated at his attitude and accused him of having cooked for other women many times before, to which Wang replied that he had only ever done it for her. But since, according to their earlier logic, there were no feelings between them, he explained that he had actually done it for the child growing inside her, not for her directly. Su Qi promptly stopped him from talking further, probably deciding that continuing that line of discussion would only cause her more headaches. Changing the topic, she asked why he was not wearing his work clothes since he was supposed to deliver takeaways, and Wang suddenly remembered, exclaiming that he had forgotten his uniform. Su Qi sarcastically suggested that perhaps he could just borrow clothes from some sexy girl he saved while delivering takeaways, to which Wang probably had no good answer. Losing her patience, Su Qi pushed him out of the office, telling him to go find that sexy girl of his. But as the door was closing, Wang called out, wondering why she was still angry, reminding her that pregnant women should not get upset. Su Qi ignored him and slammed the door right in his face, muttering that the so-called sexy girl could deliver takeaways herself now. Later, when she checked her phone, she saw a message from Wang telling her to eat slowly because he was going to earn money to buy milk powder for their child, and to remember to send him a message about what she wanted to eat for dinner. Her mood softened immediately, and she replied that she was going to her family home for dinner that night, and that he should come along. Wang, reading the message, asked whether it would be appropriate for him to go and in what capacity he should appear. Su Qi answered that he should go as the father of her child. Reading that, Wang smirked, thinking that she was quite a hard-mouthed woman, and amusingly wondered whether the husband had suddenly become the father who returned the child. Laughing to himself, he got on his bike and rode off to work. That evening, Su Qi and Wang arrived together at her home, driving in her sports car like a surprisingly stylish couple for someone who had spent the morning arguing about uniforms. When they entered, Su Qi announced that they had arrived, but her mother, Yang Human, immediately frowned and asked why she had brought that thing back again, clearly referring to Wang in a way that could have wounded the ego of a lesser man. Su Qi, however, clasped Wang's hand tightly and declared that they were married, and that she was bringing her husband home, asking whether that was acceptable. Yang Human was completely shocked by her daughter's words and demanded to know if she had really gone so far as to get a marriage certificate with a delivery man, asking if she had any idea what she was doing. Su Qi shouted back that she knew exactly what she was doing, her voice echoing through the house. At that moment, her uncle stepped in to diffuse the tension, telling everyone to calm down because it was a family dinner, and not the place to start an argument. Suchi's cousin brother joined in, agreeing with him and saying that it was Suchi's freedom to marry whoever she wanted. Her brother chimed in instead, enthusiastically inviting Wang to come in and sit down, adding that the food would be ready soon. As they entered, Suchi's uncle instructed her to go upstairs and change clothes before coming down to dinner. She replied with an okay and went upstairs. As soon as she was gone, Yang Human turned to Suchi's brother and asked what he was planning to do about the situation of his sister marrying trash. Her brother, far from panicking, told her not to worry, saying that he had already called Qin Hao, who would be arriving soon. Yang Human's mood immediately brightened, and she said that was wonderful, insisting that Qin Hao must teach that trash a good lesson when he arrived. Later, during dinner, Qin Hao arrived, and the family greeted him warmly, almost as though a celebrity had entered their home. The uncle invited him to sit down, calling him Master Qin and making him feel quite important. Qin Hao asked curiously why they had called him so suddenly, and the brother reassured him that it was for a pleasant surprise. After everyone was seated and waiting, Suchi and Wang came downstairs together. Seeing Qin Hao, Suchi froze and asked aloud why he was there. Yang Human responded impatiently, asking her why she was dazing off and whether she had seen Master Qin arrive. Suchi, frowning, reminded her that this was supposed to be a family dinner and asked what he was doing there. Yang Human dismissed her concern and instructed Qin Hao to sit down quickly, then told her daughter to sit beside Master Qin, pointing at the only empty chair. Suchi noticed that there was only a single chair left and asked why, but before anyone could answer, Qin Hao began sweating profusely as though trapped in the world's most awkward social experiment. Yang Human made a snide comment that not all cats and dogs could sit at the Su family dining table, clearly referring to Wang again, and one might imagine the narrator laughing at how this insult was delivered with the elegance of a dinner invitation. Wang, however, was unfazed and walked closer to Qin Hao, asking why Qin Hao could sit but he could not. Yang Human scoffed and asked whether he had ever looked at himself in the mirror to see if he really thought he was comparable to Master Qin. Her uncle joined in, saying that if Wang could not sit at the table, he could squat on the floor and eat instead. Suchi, unable to bear the insult, took Wang's hand and declared that he would sit while she stood. Her uncle angrily ordered her to sit down and have dinner with Qin Hao instead, but before he could finish, Wang's cold, intense gaze landed on Qin Hao, making the latter break into another wave of sweat. Qin Hao immediately stood up, nervously insisting that Wang should take his seat instead. Everyone was stunned, because Qin Hao, who was treated like a celebrity a moment ago, now looked like a student caught cheating. Yang Human protested that Qin Hao, who was treated like a celebrity a moment ago, now looked like a student caught cheating. Yang Human protested that Qin Hao did not need to give up his seat, arguing that Wang was unworthy of sitting at their family table. But Qin Hao, clearly terrified, insisted that if Wang was unworthy, then he was even less so, and he respectfully invited Wang to sit. Wang told Suchi to sit as well, reminding her gently that she was pregnant and should not stand too long, and told her to eat plenty of meat for nourishment. That unexpected tenderness coming right after a room full of family drama was almost funny in its timing, as if Wang had turned the entire Su household into the background cast of his personal cooking show. The uncle, utterly confused, asked Yang Human what was going on as he watched Qin Hao smiling nervously and standing while Wang calmly ate, showing no concern about the awkwardness at all. Finally, Suchi's brother approached Qin Hao with a mischievous grin and told him that he had a surprise prepared for him, leaving everyone curious about what would happen next, though one could only imagine Qin Hao secretly wishing he had stayed home instead of walking straight into a dinner that had become the most unintentionally comedic battlefield of family hierarchy, love, and takeaway uniform fashion disasters all rolled into one. Sitting at the table with an air of casual defiance, Wang Han declared to Suchi that he did not care about the others and that whatever was before them was theirs alone, before raising his glass and telling her to cheer with him, adding in a teasing tone that she could drink less red wine if she wished. Meanwhile, behind them, Qin Hao leaned closer to Suchi's brother with suspicion clouding his face and asked what kind of surprise he was talking about, saying that if there was nothing to do, he would rather go back. Suchi's brother, with a sly smirk that practically screamed trouble, assured Qin Hao that there was no need to be afraid of Wang Han, and in the same breath revealed in a disturbingly casual tone that he had added a narcotic to Suchi's wine, claiming that after a single glass, she would be unconscious. Qin Hao's face changed instantly. His voice rose as he shouted in disbelief, demanding to know if this was the surprise Suchi's brother had mentioned, and when the latter confirmed smugly that it was indeed so, Qin Hao could hardly contain his outrage. Suchi's brother continued smirking, arrogantly declaring that he was going to end him and asking mockingly if Qin Hao wanted to hurt him. But before the smug grin could settle on his face, something entirely unexpected happened. Qin Hao spun around sharply, panic in his voice, and yelled at the table for Suchi not to drink, warning her that there was a drug in the wine. His outburst froze the air. Both Wang Han and Suchi turned toward him in shock as he pointed an accusing finger straight at Suchi's brother, blurting out that it was him, that he was the one who wanted to stun Suchi, and that it had nothing to do with him at all. Su Qi, utterly confused, glanced between them, trying to process the accusation, and then, without hesitation, stood up abruptly and flung the entire glass of wine in her brother's face. Her expression filled with disgust as she shouted that he was shameless. Her brother, drenched in the crimson liquid and startled, stammered an attempt at a reply, but before he could form words, Wang Han intervened, calling him a little boy with fiery anger blazing in his eyes. Wang Han clenched his fist, and before anyone could stop him, he launched a furious punch straight into Su Qi's brother's face. The impact was sharp and decisive, leaving no room for misinterpretation about his intent. Wang Han then coldly warned that if her brother ever dared to touch his wife again, he would kill him without hesitation. With the confrontation over, Wang Han turned towards Su Qi, and she, still shaken but composed, remarked that the place was too dirty and unpleasant, suggesting they leave. Wang Han agreed, and together they walked out, leaving chaos and humiliation behind. Later, Yang Human arrived at the same place, noticing Su Qi's brother in his battered state, and asked with feigned concern if he was all right. Meanwhile, inside a car driving through the dimly lit streets, Su Qi and Wang Han were heading back home, the tension between them thick but unspoken. Su Qi broke the silence first, asking Wang Han in an even tone that suggested a demand rather than curiosity if he could explain what had just happened. While focusing on the road, Wang Han asked her to clarify what she wanted him to explain. Su Qi replied that she wanted to know why Qin Hao had suddenly seemed so afraid of him, his panic so intense it bordered on irrational. Wang Han gave a small smirk that betrayed neither guilt nor innocence, and told her that some people simply needed to be dealt with firmly, that some men were such cowards that only a figurative slap to the face could make them honest again. Su Qi frowned, commenting that he stank again, metaphorically pointing to his arrogance, and went on to say that he had surely noticed that his identity and social status made it difficult for him to fit into her family. Wang Han, however, brushed it off calmly, saying that it was nothing, that his own family had far more rules than hers ever did. Then suddenly, his phone buzzed violently. Wang Han checked the screen and froze in shock. A message from his sister Rao Rushing appeared. The message was short and direct. She was there, and he had 10 minutes to show up. Wang Han's composure cracked for the first time as he muttered that she was coming. Su Qi, noticing his sudden change, asked teasingly who was coming that could scare him so much. Wang Han, eyes still on the phone, said that his elder sister would arrive soon and told her to avoid talking nonsense, insisting he would handle it himself, repeating that his family followed many strict rules. Su Qi, unimpressed, scoffed and asked what kind of rules a small family like his could possibly have, but Wang Han snapped slightly, telling her to stop talking nonsense and wait. When they arrived home and entered, they found Rao Rusheng already waiting on the sofa. Her posture was commanding, her expression sharp enough to cut through stone. Wang Han's demeanor flipped instantly. He greeted her enthusiastically, calling her big sister, saying that he had missed her terribly and that she should have let him pick her up. Rao Rusheng, however, did not return the warmth. Her silence carried more weight than words, and Wang Han, recognizing the storm in her eyes, immediately dropped to his knees in reverence. Su Qi stood frozen, stunned to see a man like Wang Han kneel so quickly. Rao Rusheng looked at them both, her authority filling the room, and ordered Wang Han to come closer. Wang Han tried to defend Su Qi by explaining that she was pregnant and could not kneel. Rao Rusheng's eyes narrowed. She extinguished her cigarette slowly, and, without saying a word, walked up to Su Qi, placing her fingers on her wrist as if to check her pulse. After a few moments, she confirmed coldly that Su Qi was indeed pregnant, then without hesitation, delivered a sharp kick that landed squarely on Wang Han's face, sending him stumbling backward. She berated him, saying that after spending several years abroad, he had clearly learned all sorts of bad habits. Wang Han, still recovering from the blow, tried to explain himself, but Rao Rusheng silenced him with a glare, telling him to eat a meal at home first before talking. Su Qi, now truly infuriated, stepped between them and told Rao Rusheng that she did not know what kind of family rules they followed, but it was absolutely unreasonable to beat someone without explaining what they had done wrong. Rao Rusheng replied with chilling calm that the rules of their royal family were simple, listing them like a creed: benevolence, righteousness, courtesy, wisdom, and trust, followed by gentleness, respect, thrift, loyalty, integrity, and courage. The list sounded like a moral handbook from an ancient kingdom, and though it was meant to sound dignified, the sheer formality of it made the room feel absurdly ceremonial, because clearly none of those noble traits were on display at that moment. Su Qi, unshaken, asked which of those virtues Wang Han had violated. Rao Rusheng replied coldly that the first violation was being unfilial by marrying without informing the elders. The second was that unmarried pregnancy was shameful, and the third was that it was unwise to choose a partner who was unworthy of him. Su Qi's eyes flashed with anger as she demanded to know if Rao Rusheng truly considered her unworthy, and asked sarcastically what kind of woman would be considered worthy of Wang Han in their eyes. Rao Rusheng sat down elegantly on the sofa and answered without hesitation that before Su Qi, the family had already arranged 4 fiancés for Wang Han, each from a powerful and distinguished lineage. One from the wealthy Dry family in the capital, another named Jinshu, one called Yi Chen, who was the granddaughter of the military headquarters veteran commander Yi Huang. And lastly, the granddaughter of Miao Jiang's mother-in-law, part of the rising Nangong generation. Wang Han's expression turned awkwardly pale, clearly aware that this list made him look like a man who had rejected half the elite families of the nation, tried to defuse the situation, telling Rao Rusheng that it was almost time and that she should not provoke Su Qi further since she was pregnant. But Su Qi, her temper now past the point of reason, shouted at Wang Han not to act anymore, calling him childish. Wang Han, bewildered, asked what she meant, to which Su Qi snapped that he must think of himself as a delivery man with low self-esteem, and that his whole act of rebellion was nothing but a childish show. She accused him of playing a self-directed drama, pretending to be oppressed by her wealthy family while acting like a tragic hero defying the powerful. Wang Han, still defensive, insisted that he had not been acting or pretending in any way. Su Qi scoffed and told him he was being ridiculous, that she did not want her child to be born into such a chaotic, immature environment. She announced coldly that it was over, saying that she would call him after the baby was born, and as she turned to leave, Wang Han tried to stop her, but she brushed past him without hesitation. Observing the dramatic exit, Wang's sister immediately commanded him to cease the pursuit, a rational but clearly ignored plea. Wang, the perpetually beleaguered male lead, retorted with the emotionally charged, and perhaps strategically manipulative, statement that the fleeing woman was after all carrying his child, a detail that, to him, trumped all logic and decorum. Yet his sister, an absolute font of common sense in a world of melodrama, countered that his notion of a small family was still far too narrow in vision, suggesting the pregnant woman needed a few days to settle down, and that, far more importantly, she had arrived in Jiangning City on a vital mission from the old man. A pronouncement that instantly derailed the domestic squabble and redirected the hero's attention, prompting Wang to ask with a renewed, almost childish curiosity what precisely this mission entailed and what the specific task might be. In response, she revealed a small, intricately carved bead clutched in her hand, upon which a magnificent dragon figure had been etched, a clear marker of destiny in a universe obsessed with magical trinkets, causing Wang to inquire about the nature of the object, to which his sister explained, with the practiced nonchalance of a grandmaster revealing an ancient secret, that the bead was merely a toy, a rather expensive-looking toy. One might assume, but that years ago the master of Xiaofeng Valley had lost his child in Jiangling City, a child who bore a similar bead, one marked with a phoenix to complement Wang's dragon, a narrative beat so saturated with destiny and cliché that the very air seemed to thicken with fate, leading directly to the inescapable conclusion that Wang was obligated to find her because she was his predestined fiancée via an arranged marriage contract, a concept that elicited a groan-inducing response from Wang, who, upon viewing the shiny small ball and processing the absurdity, asked precisely what she meant, referring to this ancient intra-abdominal marriage agreement, and, more urgently, pointed out the rather large logistical hurdle that he was, in fact, already married, a perfectly logical objection immediately steamrolled by his sister, who shouted back, channeling the collective frustration of every patriarchal elder in every cultivation novel, that the old man had explicitly ordered him to find the destined fiancé first, and how dare he contemplate disobedience, a rhetorical question to which Wang, having clearly learned the art of self-preservation, could only stammer out a meek, "Don't dare," and concede that he would, resignedly, just find the person, thus setting the stage for the next inevitable confrontation in a grand, multi-generational scheme that felt more like a logistical nightmare than a romance. Meanwhile, in the plush, inexplicably sprawling environment of Longwan Villa, the recently fled Su Qi found herself in a quiet repose with her friend Lin Shuefu, who, with the earnestness of a supportive side character, urged Su Qi to live there with a peace of mind, assuring her she could stay as long as she wished, a generous offer that Su Qi accepted with a simple, heartfelt, "Thank you, Lin." The conversation quickly turned back to the day's main villain, Wang Han, with Su Qi confessing her absolute shock at discovering his true, allegedly deplorable character. A lament, Lin Shuefu met with a moment of surprising philosophical reflection, asking if Su Qi had ever paused to consider the wildly improbable possibility that Wang was simply acting for her benefit, a suggestion Su Qi immediately shot down with the understandable skepticism of a woman who had seen too much. She scoffed at the idea that the rich family in the capital would allow the Miaojing saint to fall for a delivery person, further theorizing that Wang had simply found some large theatrical big sister to act alongside him. For Lin Shuefu, unperturbed, pointed out that if even a fraction of the bizarre events were true, Wang's identity was indeed not simple, musing, with an air of conspiratorial wisdom, that people are never what they seem, particularly the ones driving scooters. which only provoked Su Qi's suspicion, as she immediately accused Lin of suddenly saying good things for Wang, an accusation Lin initially deflected with a simple denial, asking what there possibly was to hide, a perfectly innocent question that only fueled Su Qi's alarm, causing her to quickly seize Lin's hand and demand to know if she was hiding something, a moment of dramatic tension immediately broken by Lin Shuifefu, who, instead of confessing, leaped over to Su Qi and affectionately addressed the baby in her womb, calling it a little baby, and playfully questioning how it dared doubt her, a truly masterful evasion technique that shifted the entire conversation into an adorable, non-confrontational scene of expectant mother and friend, before Su Qi finally brought up the actual reason she had initially sought Lin's help. Finding the contact information for that boss, the real one, a request Lin Shuefu reported was facing an insurmountable obstacle. Her grandfather had been watching her mobile phone very closely for 2 days, a truly epic act of familial surveillance that only a secret master could pull off. But Lin nevertheless promised to definitely track down the contact information of the mysterious, all-powerful boss for her. No sooner had the conversation reached a quiet moment than a sudden bell rang, announcing a new and utterly unexpected arrival. Lin Jingpeng stood at the gate, which Lin Shuefu immediately opened, asking him what he was doing there, only for Lin Jingpeng to drop a metaphorical bomb of exposition, declaring to Lin Shuefu that he knew the boss she was looking for and could introduce her if she wished to meet him, a claim that made Lin Shuefu's jaw drop as she asked, in utter disbelief, if he really knew the legendary big boss who smashed the new area's big project with billions, a clear indication that in this city, a simple business deal was equivalent to a mythological feat. Su Qi, drawn by the sudden elevated volume of the conversation, quickly came in and echoed Lin's question, asking if it was really true, to which Lin Jingpeng confirmed his claim with an air of self-importance, stating that his grandpa took him to see it and offering to take them there now if they wanted to meet, a clear invitation to the main event. The very next morning, the narrative pivoted back to Wang, who was observed smoking a cigarette, a classic moment of brooding existential crisis in modern fiction, and lamenting the predictable unreasonableness of women. He muttered that his wife was truly sly, for she would not answer the phone nor listen to any explanation, a classic male lead complaint about a misunderstanding that was somehow always her fault. As he smoked, he checked his phone and read a message, prompting a momentary flicker of hope as he wondered aloud if she had texted him after all, only to realize, with a heavy sigh, that the text was not from Sukui but from Zia Venying, the woman he had apparently saved, who introduced herself as the recipient of his heroic actions and explained that she had washed his clothes and wanted to know his home address to return them, a proposal Wang dismissed with the tired indifference of a man who owned entire mountains of clothing, telling her simply to throw the clothes away. His attention then shifted to the small ball in his hand, the physical embodiment of his unwanted destiny, before he placed a call, merely saying, "Hello, what's the matter?" A question met by the devastating news from the person identified as Yahello that the Iron Head is dead, a pronouncement that completely shocked Wang, who immediately demanded to know how he died, only to be informed of the truly heroic and tragically cliched death. Ironhead had drowned, exhausted from his efforts to save a few people who fell into the water, a classic trope of a supporting character dying a noble death to fuel the main character's anguish, a detail that left Wang utterly shocked and presumably full of the kind of self-recrimination that only a superpowered protagonist can truly manage. Simultaneously, the scene switched back to Zia Venying, who, having received Wang's dismissive text telling her he didn't want all of his clothes, was talking to herself, perhaps to process the sheer audacity of the rejection, stating resolutely that she could no more see each other, an internal vow of distance that was immediately interrupted by the arrival of her grandfather, who, with the practiced concern of an attentive elder, asked what was wrong, noting her unhappy look, a question she avoided with a slight deflection, asking why he had not knocked on the door, which the grandfather easily parried by stating that she must not have heard him knocking, clearly implying that she had something on her mind. He then moved on to the real reason for his visit, informing Wan Ying that tomorrow was the birthday of the young master of Zhou family, and asking her to attend on his behalf, a social obligation she found baffling, asking why the young master was celebrating his birthday again, prompting the grandfather to explain the truly dramatic reason. The young master had fallen into the water a few days prior and had been saved, and the celebration was meant to be his rebirth birthday banquet, a bizarrely grandiose reason for a party, but Wan Ying flatly refused to go, pointing out the gross injustice of the situation. That the young master was saved while the person who saved him died, yet the young master had not uttered a word of thanks, a profound lapse in social graces that led her to declare him a mean person, and the entire situation disgusting. Her father, however, played the geopolitical card, reminding her that the Zhou family is from Jiangyang City and a rich family, asking her to attend as a mere favor to him, suggesting she simply show up and leave, a compromise she only accepted after accusing him of knowing how to cheat her. But the moment of conflict quickly passed as her father embraced her, calling her his good daughter, before asking the mandatory follow-up question, had she contacted the delivery boy yet? to which she confirmed she had, noting that he had stated he didn't want the clothes, a piece of information that her father received with a thoughtful sigh, concluding that it seemed there was no fate between them after all.